What's up folks, CrushSG here, back with my thoughts on Zhongli. Now full disclosure, I actually recorded a Zhongli video over a week ago based on the Chinese leaks. But before I could upload the video, MiHoYo started the whole clamping down on leaks thing, so I decided against it. Now fast forward to today, and we not only have what seems to be official information on him, but we also have more info than what we got with the Chinese leaks. Now let's jump straight into it. What I have here is information from a website called Honey Impact, and as you can see, they basically have all the information on Zhongli's kit. Let's go over it quickly. First off, we can see that his Ascension bonus is geo damage, and his base HP is very high. And this plays very well into the rest of his kit. His normal attack appears to be a 6-hit chain, but I'm pretty sure that in the same vein as Xiangling, his 5th attack hits multiple times. His charge attack is a forward lunge, and it seems like it'll deal damage to all targets along its path. Now depending on how this actually plays out in practical use, this could be a decent positional skill. We'll see when he launches. Next we have his E skill, Dominus Lapidus. On tap it creates a Geo Pillar that deals AoE Geo damage. Additionally, it resonates with other Geo constructs in the vicinity, dealing AoE Geo damage over time. Tapping has a 4-second cooldown. Now holding his E skill causes an AoE explosion that deals AoE geo damage, and creates a shield that scales with Zhongli's max HP. Now I'm not sure what this last bit means. If there are nearby targets with the geo element, it will drain a large amount of geo element from a maximum of 2 such targets. This effect does not cause damage. So what does it drain exactly? The text kinda reads like it's a direct translation from Chinese. Anyway, holding incurs a 12-second cooldown. Now it also states a duration of 20 seconds, but I'm not sure if this refers to the shield or the pillar. I'm more inclined to think it's the pillar because most character-created shields in the game have a 12-second duration. And finally we have his burst, which brings down a huge meteor that deals a large amount of AoE geo damage and petrifies targets it hits. Petrify prevents targets from moving and lasts for up to 4 seconds depending on the level of the skill. It also costs only 40 energy and has a 12-second cooldown. Next up we have his Ascension talents. The first refunds 15% of the polearm crafting costs, that's okay I guess. The second gives characters protected by Zhongli's shield a stacking shield strength buff every time the shield takes damage. This stacks up to 5 times for a maximum of 25% shield strength. And lastly, the third talent causes his burst to deal additional damage equal to 33% of his max HP. Now I definitely have some thoughts about this talent, more on that later. For his Constellations, we have C1 that increases the maximum number of simultaneously active pillars from 1 to 2. C2 causes his burst to create a shield when it lands. C3 and 5 are the usual +3 levels. C4 increases the size of his burst's AoE and increases petrify duration by 2 seconds, from 4 seconds to 6 seconds. And lastly, C6 gives his Jade Shield the ability to convert 40% of incoming damage to healing, with a max cap of 8% HP heal per instance of healing. Okay, so that's his kit. Let's go over my thoughts and some lingering questions. So my immediate thoughts are that Zhongli looks like he would make a much better support DPS than a main DPS carry. Then again, with C1 he could be one of those characters that deals a mass of smaller damage numbers that add up over time. I still feel that most of his damage is centered around his burst though, making him more suited as a burst DPS. Now his kit kinda reads a lot like Mona's kit. Summons a thing that persists on the field, dealing AoE damage, does massive damage with his burst and immobilizes targets. Yeah, he's basically the Geo version of Mona with a more powerful CC but no ability to benefit from damage-based elemental reactions. I also didn't see any mention of the 20% Fizz and Geo damage boost that is supposed to be granted by Petrify. I'm not sure if they left it out or if he got nerfed. Or maybe I just missed it, and I'm sure you guys will let me know if I actually missed it. Otherwise we'd have to wait for launch to see if he still gets that damage boost. As for his E skill, I think his E skill seems kinda meh in the damage department, at first glance at least, but it could work out well with C1 or if you run him with Ningguang or Geo Traveler. Maybe positioning their constructs such that their damage overlaps for multiple hits. I don't know, we'll have to test it out in-game itself. Now on the other hand, his pillar certainly sets him up as a great regen support for my Noelle team. Again, I'm not 100% sure about the duration part. Anyway, most persistent skills that deal damage over time have a knack for generating a fair bit of energy for the currently active character, and this was one of the main things that got my attention about Zhongli initially. If it works how I think it will, his C1 could make him a beast of an energy battery, but only time will tell. And of course we have his C6, which gives his shields the ability to heal. Now everyone is absolutely raving about how it'll make him a super DPS healing tank machine, but I'm not so convinced. For those familiar with my team setups, you'll know that I'm already running a super DPS healing tank machine. Her name is Noelle and she's a 4-star unit. From a healing standpoint, Zhongli C6 and Noelle C1 do almost the same thing. They both allow healing while shields from the respective characters are up, and the main difference is Zhongli heals the character that is hit by an enemy, whereas Noelle heals everyone when she hits an enemy. So it's basically reactive healing versus active healing. There are pros and cons to both, but I prefer to be able to control when I heal rather than requiring enemies to hit me to receive the healing. In a way, Zhongli seems to be almost the opposite of Noelle. He has super DPS at C0 and gains healing capabilities at C6, whereas Noelle has healing capabilities at C0 and gains super DPS at C6. I don't know folks, as a Noelle main, I'm just not impressed by Zhongli's kit from the perspective of a primary DPS or a primary healer. And this is again why I feel he is more of a burst DPS support than anything else. And really, getting a 5-star to C6 just for heals? There are plenty of other options that do the job just fine, sometimes better, at C0. And finally, we have my last big question mark, his third talent. His burst deals additional damage equal to 33% of his max HP. Now from my understanding of how damage is calculated, this can produce two very different damage values depending on how HP is added into the damage. We have option A, which does exactly what the description says. 33% of his max HP is added as a flat value to the final damage of his burst. No crit stats, no bonus damage. Then we have option B. 33% of his max HP is added to his burst damage and it benefits from both crit stats and bonus damage. I personally think that option B is most likely how it works, and when we get to the spreadsheet you'll see that it produces some pretty nice damage numbers. Now I am well aware that there are some on YouTube who are claiming that there is a third option, where 33% of his max HP is added to the base attack value of his burst before any modifiers are applied. Basically functioning exactly like Noelle's burst, except with HP converting to attack instead of defense converting to attack. I don't know folks, I've done the math and there is a difference between being overpowered and plain broken. I'm totally fine with a 5-star being overpowered, but this would plunge Zhongli straight into broken territory. Anyway, let's have a look at how the math works out for these two options. To keep things as accurate as possible, I used all the data available to us about his base attack, his base HP values, and his ascension bonus. Then I applied actual stats from my artifacts on my own Ningguang, because she is also a Geo character and currently built explicitly for burst DPS support. 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Petra, and the Favonia's book. Of course, I gave Zhongli the Favonia's lance, and I used level 90 stats in the calculation. And finally, because I just wanted to see how well he scales with HP, we'll start with percent HP on both his headpiece and timepiece with geo damage on the goblet. Spreadsheet time. So these are his stats. We have the level 6 skill modifier of 639, a sheet attack of 1446, 90.4% total geo damage, 20% burst damage from Noblesse, 70.2% crit damage, and a whopping 34,000 HP. As you can see over here, geo damage on goblet, HP on both timepiece and headpiece. I chose level 6 for his burst skill because it is something attainable at C0 without relying on weekly boss drops. Now from left to right is the order in which the damage is calculated, and this is where the bonus damage from HP factors in for each of the options. We have the raw damage numbers here on the left, and the more accurate numbers on the right, which takes enemy mitigation into consideration. So 22k for option A, and almost 37k for option B. Again, this is completely unbuffed with full enemy mitigation, and I think it's pretty obvious option A isn't how it works, so let's get rid of option A. Now let's take a look at it with a crit damage hit piece. 44.8k. So he could potentially hit close to 50k unbuffed damage with a 40 energy cost burst every 12 seconds. Now that's really nice. You know what though? Let's do one more stat swap for the sake of science. Let's put percent attack onto the timepiece instead of percent HP. So we have him in the exact gear I have my Ningguang, except for the weapon of course. And we have 45.2k damage. Now this is interesting because it tells us that despite his third talent, it would seem that Zhongli's burst damage doesn't actually scale better with HP versus percent attack. They are about equal. And this comes down to the ridiculous skill modifier of 640% at level 6, and this only goes up as you level the skill up, making it scale better with percent attack. Of course, 44k and 45k are within margins of error, so you'd probably be better off going for percent HP on the timepiece regardless, because of the extra shield strength. It's just an interesting result because I was sure that percent HP would have been the clear winner in terms of damage scaling. Anyway, for those curious, here's what option C actually looks like. Yep, 165k, unbuffed solo damage for a 40 energy cost, 12 second cooldown, level 6 burst. Come on now. If his burst actually works this way, I'm frankly worried about the future balance of this game. It's not so much the damage itself that bothers me. It's the damage in relation to the currently available characters. Yes, Diluc, Mona and Child could hit those damage values, but they require a good amount of setup, capitalizing on melt or vaporize just to get there, and very often they require abyss buffs or food buffs as well. So what about every other character? Again, this is solo, unbuffed with a level 6 talent. Not convinced? Let's take a look at how much damage he'll do with C3, i.e. a level 9 skill. 214k damage. What about a level 12 skill? 265k damage. I don't know about this, folks. Then again, anything could happen in the wondrous world of Genshin Impact. We'll have to see when he launches. Anyway, which looks like more realistic damage scaling to you? Options B or C? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, before we wrap things up, let's talk about how I would run Zhongli. As a DPS support in my Noelle team, he brings huge burst DPS along with good crowd control, energy regen and extra shield support. He might actually replace Ningguang as my second Geo, but it really depends on how much damage his burst actually does and how well he performs as an energy battery. Ningguang is doing a stellar job so far in that position. Now for this role, I'd gear him exactly the way I geared Ningguang. 2-piece Noblesse for 20% burst damage, 2-piece Petra for 15% Geo damage, and of course I'd probably go with percent HP on the timepiece if possible for the bonus shield strength. Depending on how much crit rate I have, I'd either go with crit rate or crit damage on the headpiece. As for weapons, I'd say the primary choice for me would be the Favonius Lance. With a burst cost of only 40 energy and a cooldown of only 12 seconds, I'd want his burst up as often as possible, and Favonius weapons are pretty much built for that. Now I could also see him as an excellent co-DPS and shield support with Ningguang. He brings huge burst DPS, much needed shield support for Geo Resonance, and of course could bring some extra damage resonating his pillar with Ningguang's Jade Screen. That didn't come out the way I intended. Moving on. Both Zhongli and Ningguang have short cooldown E skills and bursts, so it's gonna be a back and forth between the two, spamming E's and Q's for some ridiculous damage output. I'm definitely gonna try pairing him with Ningguang when he comes out as well. Alright folks, that brings us to the end of my thoughts video on Zhongli. Overall, I'm pretty excited about him and I'm happy that I probably won't need him anywhere near C6 to get his full value. As always, thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't, share my videos with your friends, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.